Welcome into the Gaming Discourse. I'm Tyler Frater alongside Richard De La Cruz, who is not here today, and Chief Engineer, Lieutenant Commander Connor Frater.
Good evening.
It is Monday, July 7th, 2025. Go to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/gaming discourse, patreon.com/the gaming discourse. You can support us for $247, $10. Get your name in the video credits, early access to our videos, access to our Discord server, and more. I'm working on a video right now for the channel, a video about Splinter Cell Blacklist. The script is done. I recorded it this morning, so I will be editing it throughout the next few days, and with some luck, hopefully it will be done probably Friday, if not by Thursday night, Thursday afternoon. Patrons will get it first on Patreon for a few days, and then it will be released publicly. So hopefully by this time next week, I will have the final installment of my Splinter Cell retrospective posted, and I will be on to working on other projects. Okay, so we have a lot to talk about. A bunch happened in the industry over the past few weeks, and I assume we've both been playing our fair share of games, hopefully?
Yeah.
No? Okay, so it looks like it's Death Stranding 2 hour for me, baby.
I have been painting really small details on a lot of miniatures.
Oh, okay, that's nice and relaxing.
I'm avoiding video games because I work in video games.
It's a good way to de-stress. Well, are you playing any games at all that you'd like
Just
to talk about?
Phasmophobia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's your comfort game,
Kinda.
despite it being a horror game.
Yeah.
There's
It's
just
a puzzle.
there's just something something comforting about like knowing it's only these things that are trying to hurt me, nothing else.
Yeah.
I open a book and here's all the things trying to hurt me. They're all right
Nothing
here.
else in this game can hurt me. Just these, however many things there are.
Just these 30 or so ghosts. That's it. And I can guess them and run away.
Yeah, exactly.
Or put a timer up and they can't hurt me at all for 5 minutes. Okay. Well, I'm sorry. I hope you get to play more games soon. Or the past week or so, I've been bouncing around doing a lot of stuff. Still playing through Expedition 33, which is still very good. I started Death Stranding 2, which I like so far, but I have some things that I don't like. I've been playing Date Everything, played that a little bit. It's very funny, very fun. What else? Sunderfolk. So Sunderfolk is the game Mike Morhaime, one of the co-founders of Blizzard, he left, founded his new studio. I forget what it's called, but they made Sunderfolk. Sunderfolk is basically Gloomhaven, if you've ever played Gloomhaven or Frosthaven. So it's very similar to that. It's a video game, obviously, but it's modeled around sort of a board game. And the premise is your phone is your controller. So you don't hold a controller, and then everybody plays on the same screen. So there's a social element to it, right?
Okay.
You're not supposed to. I assume you can play like on like over the internet.
Yeah.
You know, but I think the larger point is that you get in a room with people, and it like playing a board game, but instead everyone shares the same screen, and then on your phone, you move with your phone like. You look to see where your character is on the board, which is a hex-based board, and then you sort of just trace a path on your phone, and that's how your character moves. It's very convenient. It takes a little bit to get used to. I found I was trying to use my thumb to move at first, and it was kind of imprecise, so I had to use my index finger, and that actually was a lot better at like moving places where I wanted to move. The characters are these not necessarily classes, but they're like different types. So there are like archetypes where there's tanks. I play as a bard. There's DPS characters, support characters, etc., etc. The characters have ability cards, and you play an ability card, and that's what you use. So some ability cards you move and then attack, some apply buffs, what have you. One of the major differences between Sunderfolk and Gloomhaven is that in Gloomhaven, when you play a card, for the most part, you discard that card. That card goes away. Yeah. In Sunderfolk, you don't have to worry about that. You can keep playing the same card every time it's your turn. Yeah, so the characters are very funny. There's a pyromancer that's like a gecko that's on fire.
So that's a salamander.
Salamander, yeah.
Which a salamander is also a name for a type of dragon.
Yeah, exactly. The
Which
bard
that is very cute.
The bard is a bat,
Yeah.
and that's the character I play as. So it's very like, so you're all these different types of animals. So it's very, it does feel very Blizzardy in that sense. But I was having a lot of fun. There's another one of the major differences between Sunderfolk and Gloomhaven is that Gloomhaven, you're not supposed to tell. You're not supposed to. You can if you want, but the rules say that you shouldn't tell your other teammates what your initiative number is. Because when you pick a card, you pick 2 cards, and that's going to be your turn. And then you pick one of those numbers as your initiative. So you'll have high numbers like in the 70s and 80s, and you'll have low numbers like in the teens or 20s, right? And different characters have widely different initiative scales, or initiative ranges. But the idea is that because you cannot tell your party members what number you're going to select, you have to sort of anticipate what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So you can say like, I'm going to go late, right? Signifying that you have a later initiative, but you won't say I have a 70, right?
Yeah.
Obviously it's a board game, so you can do it if you want, but I think Gloomhaven plays best because the idea is that you are, the turn goes and you kind of have to anticipate what your other party members are going to do, what their turns are going to be like, and you kind of have to work off of that. Sunderfolk is different. You talk because nobody takes a first turn. It's player turn, enemy turn, player turn, enemy turn. So players can go in any order, which means you discuss with your teammates, like, hey, who's going to go first? Who's going to go second? What should we do here? And so that opens your team up to a lot more sort of tactical creativity, because now, especially once you learn the cards of your teammates, you can kind of make suggestions like, oh, hey, if I do this, you can play the card that you played earlier that lets you do this. So you can sort of strategize it and game it that way, which is interesting. So in doing so, it becomes a much more social experience because we're in Gloomhaven where you pick a card and everyone's like, I'm going late, I'm going early, and that's all you can kind of say.
Yeah.
Or I would like to kill this guy, but you can't say when. In Sunderfolk, every turn is like a big discussion about how are we going to go about doing this? What are we going to do next? So it's constant communication, constant talking. So I think that's fun from a gameplay perspective, but from a design perspective, it makes sense because it gets everybody in the room into the game, paying attention to the board and stuff like that. One thing I was worried about was because it does take place on your phone, it's like the temptation is there to swap away from the app and do something else.
Yeah.
But it moves pretty quickly. Turns aren't very long and things constantly change. The battlefield constantly changes because there's lots of enemies, etc. So it's like you're kind of engaged pretty consistently, so it keeps you in. And then the game alternates between the town. I forget what the town is called, but there's a town that your characters start at. And there's different NPCs in the town that you can talk to, and eventually you open marketplaces where you can buy new items. And you can upgrade the town with gold that you find and stuff like that. So it's got that whole sort of market mechanic to it as well. Game like a town building mechanic. And then you go out, select a mission, and you go on that quest and you do that quest and you come back and, you know. So, yeah, I'm having a lot of fun with it. You know, I guess the only downside to Sunderfolk is if you're playing with a full party, it's best to have all those people there. So it's a game where you you're going to want to have 4-player co-op. I guess you probably could play by yourself somehow, maybe, but I'm not sure.
4 tablets.
Yeah. I'm not sure it would be the same. It might be fun, but again, part of the experience is social discussion, talking, that kind of thing, hanging out, having fun. It's all on the same TV, so you can all like lay out on a couch. And you're all sorted. So it's like very cozy, right? It's not like you're at a game table or you're at individual PCs or whatever. So yeah, I don't know if it replaces Gloomhaven for me. One thing I noticed is that Gloomhaven and Frosthaven have a lot of setup and takedown time because you get tiles and all these different miniatures.
And you have to build out the dungeon you're going into.
Yeah, you have to do that. And then
someone has to manage the monsters.
You have to play the NPC monsters, and you run into all these like weird rule sets where you have to figure out, oh shoot, what do we do here? All that logistic stuff is gone in Sunderfolk because it's a game. The PlayStation's doing the processing for you. It's setting up the board for you. You don't have to. So yeah, I really enjoy it, and I can't wait to play more. and it was a nice surprise because I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure. The reviews seemed fun, but I didn't know like how well that kind of experience would translate. And yeah, it's really good so far. The other game, that I've been playing for a couple weeks now is Death Stranding 2, which I am enjoying so far. The main thing right off the bat I'll say about Death Stranding 2, and I saw someone at PC Gamer wrote a piece about this. It was just the headline. But Death Stranding 2 thus far has the same problem. One of the major problems the first one had, which is it's too easy. Like, you have to take a box to the other side, this, a person over here. Okay. And you see, oh no, there's a river and cliffs. And it's like, well, you could just walk through the river. And the cliff over here, there's like a little ramp up the cliff, so you're fine. So it's like, okay, well, give me like, damn it, like I want challenge. Make me use my ladders, make me find creative solutions, make me like make the geography and the landscape, an opponent, an obstacle, as opposed to something that is sometimes a little inconvenient. And that was one of my main complaints about the first Death Stranding was it was just a little too easy to get around, and Death Stranding 2 is kind of in the same way. There was at one point I had to make a delivery up a mountain to a musician who was staying up in a mountain. So I was like, hell yeah, I'm gonna go up this mountain. And I looked at the mountain on the map, and I was like, oh, this mountain's pretty steep. And I'm using a motorcycle thing, and so I was like, oh, so I'm probably going to have to like hop off my motorcycle and then climb this mountain because it looks pretty steep. There's lots of different like ragged edges. Okay, this is going to be pretty cool. I get there, I drive right up the mountain. Like it's just nothing. It's not even a challenge. So it's like, okay, so what's like, come on. So it's one of those things where, I don't know, I still enjoy the game. I'm still invested in the story, which we'll talk about here in a second. I'm still enjoying making deliveries. I think something about Death Stranding that maybe is that I haven't talked about a lot is like, why do I like the delivery gameplay so much? And I think it's the same reason I like Satisfactory, because you build this factory and you make it as efficient as possible, and eventually you replace the power stations that eat plants for power with coal power stations, right? And that ups your power capacity, which means you can build more factories, which means you can produce more stuff, right? So it's this exponential growth, and it's about making this huge factory, as efficient as possible, right? Death Stranding's sort of the same way. It's like you make these routes, you make them as efficient as possible. The challenge is to take a bajillion boxes, load them on the back of Norman Reedus, and like see if you can efficiently deliver them. So it's the same kind of logistical challenge. Of course, the issue there is that, again, the terrain is a little too easy to get around, and BTs seem to be, there's a new BT called a Watcher, because BTs in the first game, they couldn't see you. So as long as you stayed quiet, if you got too close, you would have to hold your breath. But they couldn't see you, so you could just sneak around them. But there's new PTs that can see you. They're called Watchers, and they kind of look pretty creepy. They're like hovering. They're like black, like smoky bodies that are like hovering around with like weird blue eyes. But when I snuck past them, they didn't see me, even though they were definitely looking in my direction. So I don't know how close they have to be. So like, I don't know how different the BT experience is going to be. But I hope that it gets more difficult. I hope that there's more challenging areas. Because I want to be able to, there is a deep satisfaction. Every now and then in Death Stranding, there's a moment where it's like, oh, shoot, the best way to do this is to drop a rope into the side of this mountain and mountain climb down and take my time finding a way. That stuff is awesome. Or if there are enemies in the way, it's like I have to deal with these enemies, and then you plan for it. So like the other day, there was one mission that was cool because one box I had to grab was put on the top of this weird rock outgrowth, and it was like at the edge of a river. It was a really awkward place, right? And so I had to get off my bike and climb to the top of this outgrowth to grab this box that was at the top of it, right? But I didn't want to leave my bike sitting in the open because I knew it could start to rain. So I used my PCC, which is the thing that builds little structures, and I built a timefall shelter, which is like a little umbrella that protects you from timefall, which means your gear doesn't rot away. So I parked my motorcycle underneath that after I built it.
Mm-hmm.
I unloaded my backpack once I got close enough to this is one of the good things about Death Stranding 2. You can sort of take your backpack off and just run around as Sam. So if there is something you need to do, like if you do want to go into a base and steal one box real quick, you can take your backpack off, run in there, just have Sam pick it up with his hand and run out, throw your backpack back on. But anyway, I got to the top of this outgrowth. I picked up this box. It was tricky to get down. And then once I got down, it started to rain. But because I had parked my car under that timefall shelter, my car was fine. So it's like, okay, awesome. I planned, I did this, I anticipated, and I succeeded. So it's like I was rewarded for that anticipation.
We're going to make more things out of the timefall shelter material.
Yeah, right. It's called chiralium. No.
Why don't we make more things out of chiralium?
I think everything in Death Stranding, because technically the way everything is...
I don't care.
Well, it is interesting because the way everything is made is with chiralium, but chiralium isn't super powerful. So, like, everything is disposable in the game. Like, even vehicles, they have electric batteries, and they don't run for very long. So it's like, it's this interesting give and take where the world is able to produce things easily, but none of it, it's all like 3D printed, and none of it lasts very long, which is why porters are so important. Because they can port the real things, to help you out. As far as the story goes, it's the same bonkers, like Kojima going nuts kind of thing. I will say that I can already tell that it has certain political things that it's trying to say, which is very Kojima. It gives Sam a little bit more room to talk. Sam's very taciturn, right? He doesn't say very much, but he seems to have he seems to know more of himself in this game, which makes sense because he was always sort of a loner. He has awesome possum phobia. No, awesome. I forget how to pronounce it. He's afraid of being touched. He doesn't like, it's like possum phobia, something like that. I don't know if it's a real thing, but he doesn't like being touched. I have no idea how to pronounce that. Phobia. I don't know. I don't know how to pronounce it. Watch Death Stranding. You'll see them because they say it all the time.
Phobia?
Something like that. But in any case, so Sam's kind of a loner, right? And in the first game, he meets Louise, which is the bridge baby. And he and Louise, he sort of takes Louise in. He kind of becomes her surrogate father. So that's where you're left at in the second game. And even though he sort of connects the United States, he kind of just wants to live in peace with Louise, right? So Sam, I think we get to see like something Sam wants, where in the first game, I'm not sure. Sam was sort of a reluctant hero who saved the day. But I'm not sure if it was ever, he kind of saved the day because he was one of the only people that could do it, as opposed to him being like this virtuous knight. And in this one, it's like we get to see Sam being a person he wants to be, right? Which is...
Well, we know what he wanted in the first one.
What's that?
Delicious cans of Monster.
Yeah. Oh, God. I haven't seen any of that, thank goodness, in the second game. But Norman Reedus, his performance is very good so far. There are new enemies that are robots, which I interpreted as Kojima going... Fine, you can kill things. We'll make robots so you can shoot those, because in the first game it was like, if you kill anybody, they'll turn into a BT and explode. And so you had to like take dead people's bodies to like tar pits or whatever so they didn't explode. So in the second game, it's like, fine, fuck it. We'll give you robots to shoot. Jesus. So,
to alive.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, there's these like robot soldier things that you get into a fight with, but the first time Sam encounters them, it's funny because Sam doesn't know who they are, and Sam's line is just, "Who the fuck are these guys?" And it was just funny because Sam doesn't express a whole lot of anger or frustration, and it was just delivered with so much exhaustion that like, oh my God, it's like
That was just Kojima.
It was just like, I've connected the United States and now there's more things I have to take care of. It was just it made me laugh, but it was really well delivered. So yeah, there's all kinds of stuff going on in the second one though, with like different new characters, different new like little dynamics, but yeah, I'm gonna focus on Expedition 33 for a while, and then once I get done with the Blacklist video, I'm going to jump between them a lot. But I feel like Expedition 33 is a game I can finish and be okay with, because I know it's not super long. Where Death Stranding 2, I know is I'm gonna have to really like think about everything that's going on because it's so Kojima. I had a thought the other day about Kojima. So like, and when I say Kojima, like our tour theory, I don't know. Does Kojima and us give Kojima too much credit for the games that he makes? Maybe. I think that's a possibility.
Yes.
I will say this. He is the only game developer whose games have like an incredibly identifiable tone to them, right? It's uncanny because some of the weird stuff, like not just content, but like tone, how things are balanced, how things are funny, how things are presented. It's the same way in Metal Gear Solid, right? Which makes me think, it's the same person writing it. It's the same sort of singular vision, or the same director or something like that. So I don't know if I think that's tricky, but for the most part, I don't think so. But what I will say, the thing that I was going to say with Kojima is, in an interview once, I heard him say that he considers himself both an artist and an entertainer, right? And that seems like of course, isn't everybody that? But I think he sort of views the two things as two pillars that you can't really, I don't know, that instead of them meshing into one coherent line, you have two lines throughout the whole thing. You have the entertainment and the art, right? That kind of run parallel to one another. Whereas in other games or other movies or whatever, it sort of all tries to like smush together into one coherent artistic vision. And that's, I think, how I would describe a lot of Kojima games and that's why there's like this whiplash between this like incredibly thoughtful line about existence, and then in the next scene you meet a guy whose soul is trapped in a doll and his name is Doll Man, and you're like, what? and you toss him in the air for recon and he goes woo when you toss him, so it's like entertainment, art, and they go side by side as opposed to like trying to weave them together. So yeah, Death Stranding 2 I'm enjoying very much so far, and I'll have a lot more to say as I play more. Okay, are we ready for the news? Thanks for listening. If you like our content, please consider subscribing or leaving a like and comment. You can find us at patreon.com/thegamingdiscourse. And our tiers are $2, $4, $7, and $10 and include getting your name in the video credits, early access, and access to our Discord server. All right, so we're going to talk about the Microsoft layoffs here. And this was actually really difficult to watch when they were going on. There were over 9,000 people laid off. They were laid off people were laid off in stages. People were finding their Slack channels were like canceled and not told. There were people left in limbo. So it was all just sort of, I don't understand. These companies can organize like gigantic payments for ridiculous investments in AI and bullshit like that, but they can't figure out how to like lay people off without putting them into a limbo for a couple days or something.
Because they don't care.
It's like there's no more organized way to do any of this. In any case, so a lot of different stuff happened. I'll go through some of the highlights. I'm not sure we're going to cover it. I shouldn't say highlights. Some of the lowlights, and I'm not sure we're going to cover everything. But the Initiative's Perfect Dark reboot was canceled and the studio was closed. Everwild, a new game from Rare, was canceled. A new MMORPG from ZeniMax Studios was also canceled. And then one of the founders, or one of the I forget his name off the top of my head, but one of the people that like one of the developers that started Elder Scrolls Online resigned. And I can see his face. I'm just blanking on the name. A new FPS from Romero Games was canceled, and the studio is looking for more funding. As far as I can tell, the studio was not shut down. It's just Microsoft, I guess, decided they didn't want to make that investment anymore. So all of a sudden, Romero Games, the bottom of it is taken out. So they have to like find a new way to approach things, and hopefully they find it. I want to read a bit from a Seattle Times story here. Quote, during the company's 2025 fiscal year, Microsoft set a plan to spend more than $80 billion on infrastructure to meet AI demands. That's a $25 billion increase in capital expenditures from the company's 2024 fiscal quarter. Okay, so we have shifting priorities here, and so there's a lot to talk about. I don't know, but what were your reactions? What were your feelings? Because it was definitely, I don't work in the games industry, and this was kind of killed my mood for like an entire day just seeing all this stuff rolled out.
Well, the company I work for was affected.
Yeah.
And we got this information on one of the reasons why I wasn't here, because I was dealing with like, you know, friends being laid off.
Understandable.
And yeah, when it happened, it did come out of nowhere. I can't go into specifics, but it was people showed up on Monday and were gone before 10. Yeah. For the rest of it, kind of figured that more was coming after we got hit, because we're a smaller section of a very small section that works for Microsoft.
Yeah.
And so if we're getting hit, Microsoft's getting hit.
Yeah. And people, and it wasn't just gaming too. There was layoffs across Microsoft, but gaming was hit particularly hard. And people were laid off in Washington. People were laid off in the UK. So it was like global. It was all over the place. And they did feel different. I don't know. It's not just the scale, but I think the products, along with Xbox's recent like confusing commitment to gaming. I think a lot of people have this takeaway, and I'm definitely not like the only one to think about it. But it's like, yeah, I don't think Microsoft cares all that much about gaming. I think right now their focus is AI and whatever that means. And their focus is building the infrastructure for that. So server farms, GPUs, whatever else you need to run your AI platform, right? So like with, you know, what's that old saying about McDonald's? McDonald's is a real estate company, not a restaurant company, because they like own the land or whatever. So it's like with Microsoft, AI right now for them is as much infrastructure as it is building the actual software.
Well,
right?
For the past probably 20, 25 years at this point, Microsoft's main focus has been infrastructure, has been server farms. They're one of, if not the leading company when it comes to server farms and providing those services to companies.
Yeah, and then cloud computing and stuff like that. I'm honestly not sure like if them or like Amazon, because I know AWS has contracts with the US government and stuff like that. And I'm not sure what all like how the technology, if it's one-to-one with like what Microsoft offers and stuff like that. All I'm saying is I'm not sure. I'm off the top of my head, I don't know like if Microsoft has massive contracts. I mean, I assume it does with the U.S. government or whatever. But in any case, so yeah, it's like they're building this infrastructure, and that's sort of the thing they're deciding to focus on right now. But even if they are, I don't know. I don't know. these layoffs, it's like the Romero Games one. There was a report that there was like 100-ish people working at Romero Games. So how big of an investment is that for Microsoft? Putting money into an FPS that's being made by like 100 people. I don't like, is that a 300, did that game balloon to like a $300 million budget? It's hard for me to believe. I'm sure it was an expensive game to make, and we'll never know how much, what the budget is, but like, it's stuff like that where, I don't know, did that really need to happen for you to like put yourself, for Microsoft to put itself into a position where it felt financially stable, or at least financially comfortable when it comes to AI? Another thing that on Patreon the other on Friday that I expressed frustration about was, Microsoft, they one of the large areas for gaming is mobile gaming, right? And Microsoft didn't really have a foot in that door until it bought Activision Blizzard King, and all of a sudden it got Candy Crush, right? So with that purchase, they got this huge collection, this huge infusion of soulless MTX money, right? And so, I don't know, what is the purpose of that? Of all this soulless mobile MTX money that is just, there's just so much of it in the world, right? People just can't stop spending money on stupid ass mobile games. And if that's what you want to do, fine. But like, if you get an infusion of that much money and then you're still laying people off, then I don't know, what are we doing? Like, what if that is not enough to help subsidize your gaming division, then what is at this point? You know what I mean? Like, how much money would you have to make in order to like be comfortable with your gaming division? If Candy Crush isn't providing the right amount of funding. Now, off the top of my head, I don't know if Candy Crush's revenues have just tanked throughout the past year or so. I'm going to assume not. But still, like, all these companies, from EA to Microsoft to Sony, they're all just like, they're like hyenas just slobbering at the mouth to figure out how to monetize and how to get live services going. And then as soon as Microsoft has one, it's okay, now that we have one of these mobile games, one of these mobile giants, we're just going to be cutting jobs left and right. And that's really frustrating. And I don't know. The economics of the games industry is really confusing, and it's partially because of reasons like that. Like, you think that's supposed to solve problems, and it doesn't, and here we are. It's hard to like state the impact of what Microsoft has done over the past few years, because Tango is gone now, the initiative is gone, all these developers are gone. So you have a massive amount of experience, of brain power that is either going to have to find another job somewhere or is exiting the games industry. And, with respect to like Arcane Austin and Tango, that sucked because those were really creative studios with cool ideas, right? And they're gone now. And so it's like, how many times are you going to do this until you're in a position that like Microsoft is okay with your gaming division? I don't know what it is, but I wish, part of me wishes someone would ask, because, Phil Spencer and them, they'll bring up that, we have shareholders to answer to, we have to grow. And look, listen, if Phil Spencer wants to sit there and say, my hands are tied, we have to grow, we have to be a growing business, consoles have stagnated, blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, fine. But can you just admit that what you're doing is hurting video games? Can you just admit that? Like, just say, these are the actions we have to take, and I'm taking them knowing that we are actively and severely hurting the industry that I'm trying to build up. Say something like that. Instead of this like mealy-mouthed, our numbers are better than ever, more players than ever, Game Pass is this, and then on the other hand, firing a bunch of studios and saying, and it really hurts when we have to do this thing. I kind of wish someone would ask the question, hey, granted, your hands are tied, you're a public company, there's nothing you can do. Okay, can you just admit that shutting Tango Gameworks was destructive, just when it comes to the quality and sort of artistic breadth of video games itself, right? That it just hurts the medium itself when a studio like that is shut down. Can we just admit those things? When Romero Games has its funding taken out from underneath it, when an MMO is closed, can we just admit that you're actively hurting the industry? I don't know. There's a lot of different avenues of attack here. And yeah, we can, I say this with everything with Microsoft, we can trace it back to the Xbox One. The Xbox One was the dumbest thing, and I think Microsoft had momentum going into that console generation. PlayStation wasn't empty of momentum, right? Mm-hmm. The Last of Us had come out. The Last of Us was one of the last games for PS3, so it definitely provided like a boon going into that next generation. But Microsoft's whole announcement, the restrictions, everything that they tried to do, I think just it was like tripping at the starting line, and they've just never been able to get back into it, and it's their own goddamn faults. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. I'm like, who made those decisions? Who was the guy that decided, we need a 24-hour online check for the Xbox One. You can't share used physical games with the Xbox One. Kinect has to be integrated for the Xbox One to work, right? Who are the people that decided those ideas were good, Who because I wondered, where are they working now? I don't know. Maybe they've lost their jobs, but how come? I don't know. It's like Don Matrick, after saying that people on a submarine can't have an Xbox One because you don't have internet down there. After saying that, he left Xbox and he went to work for Zynga, which is like a step to the side. Mm-hmm. Anybody else, an artist does something accidentally wrong, or God forbid, their game gets delayed, they get fired and kicked out of the industry. Don Matrick tanks a fucking console and he just goes to Zynga, So it's like, where are these? How about we fire some executives that have done a shitty job managing some of these projects and stuff like that?
But Tyler, their jobs are very important.
Yeah, I'm sure. But yeah, we can
possibly be the CEO of 3 different companies at the same time. Yeah. It just doesn't happen.
We can talk about games with Microsoft, which again, it's like it appeared like Microsoft had momentum over the past year or so, because it was like Starfield didn't review well, but it sold well, right? And then Avowed was
play well either,
or that. Avowed was like, okay, it kind of reviewed okay, sold okay, sold fine as far as I know. So it's like you had different, I don't know, Indiana Jones, I'm not sure how well that sold, but it's like you had games that I think people were excited for and that bucked the narrative that Xbox lacked games, which it did, but maybe it's too little too late. Mm-hmm. I don't know. And now it's like with Microsoft focusing so much on AI, do we really believe that that they're going to have tolerance for Xbox trying to launch some kind of weird agnostic console generation where you can play your games anywhere and stuff like that, especially when you're going up against a company like Steam, right? That was the thing that people talked about with the Xbox ROG Ally, right? Was this thing is coming after Steam. And then Xbox announced that their Xbox app has Steam games on it, so you can launch Steam games through the Xbox app. Cool. Okay, great. But the problem is that Xbox's parent company, Microsoft, doesn't appear to give a shit about games, right? And also they have shareholders who need to have their bottoms wiped and a new diaper placed on them every now and then. Steam doesn't have that, right? Steam, if the Steam Deck was a complete disaster, it'd go, oh, that sucks, and Steam would move on because they're a private company who is focused on games, not focused on doing a bunch of other stupid shit.
Whose leadership gets attacked by sharks.
Whose leadership lathers themselves up in barbecue sauce and goes, oh no, I was just looking at it, I was just staring a shark down, I didn't know what to do. Like that's Steam, that's Valve, right? They don't have, they're not a public company, they don't have shareholders. So if you want to take that on, if you want to try and chip away at that dominance, then it's gonna take a level of commitment and belief, and it doesn't look like Microsoft has that. So I don't know, man. Everybody's been bagging on Microsoft, and rightfully so. And we're having the same sort of conversations that we were having 4 years ago, and 5 years ago, and 6 years ago. Game Pass is looking less and less like the answer for them as games continue to be more expensive, and nobody is having the conversation of how do we bring costs for games down, like the budget for games down. Everybody is just, well, we just have to charge more for games. So, Outer Worlds 2 is going to be $80, right? Okay, so there's multiple problems with this. One, if Outer Worlds 2 is $80, you wait 6 months, and on Steam, there's going to be a $15 discount, right? So you wait that long, boom, it's a little bit cheaper. It's also going to launch day one on Game Pass. So, yeah, okay, I can buy it for $80, or I can subscribe to Game Pass for however much it is. It's between $10 and $20, and I can play Game Pass, and I can play Outer Worlds 2 for a month, right? And maybe 2 months for like another subscription, for a re-up subscription, and sort of quasi renting your games instead of buying them. From a preservation standpoint, that's not great. But from an economic standpoint, when do people start making that decision more often? Because they're like, I'm not going to spend $80 on a game. Like I'm just not going to do it. So I don't know. At what point does Microsoft say Game Pass is going to have to change eventually, right? And we've said that for a long time, that the price was going to go up.
It's not going to happen until the casual audience starts getting priced out.
You think so?
Well, as long as people are buying the yearly games that come out.
I see what you mean. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not going to happen until it starts to affect the actual discussions on how do we lower the budgets of these games without affecting the end product. That's going to happen once the casual audience starts weaning off of games.
Yeah, that's an interesting.
Because it may not be the best example, but Madden every year comes out, sells. Once that starts to slow down because the next Madden is $80, $90, whatever, once the casual audience start getting priced out, that's when the conversations will happen, boardrooms, and that's when changes will start to be made, more than likely to the detriment of the.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought. Because I don't know how, as far as, I mean, you would think if the $70 price increase over the last few years for those casual games, like your sports games, FIFA, Madden, etc., and Call of Duty, if that negatively impacted the casual market, you'd think we would have heard about it.
Well, I don't think it has yet.
It hasn't. Yeah, it hasn't. So if
a $10 price increase between something you buy once a year, people might stop and look at it for a second, but they'll be like, oh, well, economy, whatever, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But once that starts pushing higher, and there's that trend of it just continuing to rise, then it becomes, an $80 purchase once a year. Yeah, that's still feasible, but people might be a little more hesitant towards an $80 video game, an $80 luxury.
Yeah. I guess the other issue, the economics are weird, because the other issue with that would be something like, I don't know, if somebody drops $100 on FIFA Ultimate Team every year, right? It's one of their hobbies. They drop $100. And that's not including the price of the game. Yeah. So every FIFA they're dropping between $150 and $200, right? Well, then the $10 increase for the entry point into FIFA doesn't really matter, right? Because it's like, oh, it's just 10 more bucks.
Yeah.
So when you and I buy a game, back in the day, we bought a $60 game, $70 game. Now that's just a $10 price increase, as opposed to the casual, not, I don't know. It's not, I guess that wouldn't be casual, but the whales, right? That are dropping the MTX money on things. If the price increase doesn't really matter as much because they're already spending way more on that anyway. So relatively speaking, the price increase is less of an impact. I'm curious, like, how that market would shake out. Maybe, I don't think it would dissuade them, but maybe it would if FIFA got up to like $80. And we're speculating here and going nuts. Because all back to the original point with Game Pass, it's just like something's got to give at some point where, I don't know, if you're gonna charge more for games, but you're also putting them out on a streaming, oh no, not on a stream, not streaming, on a gameplay service, like something's not going to work eventually. And yeah, I don't know. I like Xbox's. I feel like they tried to innovate. They tried to do something different, but then they kind of got lost. And then they just made big acquisitions, and now they're just making layoffs. And it's just, there's nothing about games. I don't know. It's just that, like, maybe that's unfair. Outer Worlds 2 is coming out later this year, but like, what? And they have other announcements. We know they have a Halo announcement coming up sometime soon. There's like Clockwork Revolution and stuff like that. But I don't know. Those things. It just doesn't feel like they're being pushed or hyped for or talked about in the same way that people are excited for Ghost of Tsushima 2 or PlayStation exclusives, right? And I don't know what the solution here is. Honestly, in a perfect world, my solution would be you scale down everything. You start making games on smaller budgets. You do realistic timetables. And you communicate that. You say, hey, this game was made on a smaller budget. We still consider it AAA, but you're going to get 20 to 30 hours. You just be transparent about the products that you're making, right? And I think people will be okay with that. And yeah, with the next Xbox, it's like you make an Xbox that isn't... that's not necessarily like Nintendo cheap, but you don't have to make a console that is $600 or $700, like, or $500. I feel like you can make a console around, I don't know, on the cheaper end that prioritizes getting people to buy it and putting exclusive games on it, right? As opposed to filling it with hardware that gets the resolution up to a native 4K or something like that, right? Especially because what we've seen from the games industry right now and kids is that mind-blowing graphics are nice, but I don't know if that's what sells games. Maybe in some ways, but it's just, kids are playing like Roblox games again about farming.
The best-selling game in history is Minecraft.
Right? So it's like, and
graphics aren't the selling point.
And I don't know how expensive it is to like maintain that or whatever, but well, all I'm saying is if you scale things down and you lower you sort of lower you let out some water from the dam and you lower the entire I'm not sure what metaphor I'm going for here. You just scale down. Maybe you make all this more manageable. Anyway, sorry. So that was a lot of ranting. I apologize. But Xbox just seems to, I don't know. It seems like sometimes they kind of have a good idea going and then something like this happens and now we have no idea. And their nebulous ideas for the future just don't make sense because I don't know if Microsoft is committed to getting into it competing with Steam. Or with PlayStation for that matter. And to do that, you have to have games. And they have some, but it's like they don't have like it just doesn't feel like it used to. I don't know. So maybe that's an oversimplification. Do you have anything else to say? Anything else you would like to say about this?
I don't think so. Okay.
We will move on. So I want to talk about this speaking of a story about the AAA games industry, this Ars Technica story by Samuel Axon. It's about the development of the upcoming Battlefield game. Next Battlefield game. According to Axon, sources close to the project say culture clashes, ballooning budgets, and major disruptions have disrupted the game's development. EA has made major structural and cultural changes to Battlefield's development in order to make it compete with Call of Duty and Fortnite. These changes have led to extraordinary stress, long hours, and burnout, with some employees taking exhaustion leave. EA leadership set a goal of 100 million players over a set period of time that includes post-launch, and the budget is said to be well north of $400 million. It's a really detailed story. It gets into the different studios that are working on different parts of the game. The single player studio, which was it Gridiron? I think it was Gridiron, led by Marcus Leto. Which that shut down because there was all sorts of stuff going wrong behind the scenes with the single player. And then, on the multiplayer side, you have DICE, who is in Sweden, and they have to communicate with people in Los Angeles, and I think that creates tension. And of course, you have these ambitions, these expectations, right? I think there's a difference between ambitions and expectations, and corporate dudes saying bullshit like 100 million players. Those are expectations, not ambitions. But I think that's obviously just an insane thing to think, right? I have a lot to say, but do you have anything off the top of your head?
They're insane thinking they're going to get 100 million players.
Yeah. So, this story, I don't know. It reminded me in some ways of the Dragon Age story that we just talked about a few weeks ago, right? It's a lot of the same, like, why are you taking this property to do this with it? Do you need to do that, or do you just want to have another one of these in your portfolio? And that pisses me off because it is so stupid, especially for a company like Electronic Arts that already has a FIFA, right? A soulless, like, there is nothing human in FIFA. Like, it's a game about humans on a pitch, ostensibly, but it is not about that. It's about an algorithm that produces, it's about loot boxes, right? There is not a single atom of humanity in FIFA, right? And they make a shit ton of money off that. And they're going to make a shit ton of money off Madden. And now they have College Football 25, which is a whole nother thing that they're going to make even more shit tons of money with, right? So it's like, that is their business. That is Electronic Arts. Electronic Arts is their shitty sports games, right? Okay, so in that economic context, could Dragon Age exist? I can't say for sure. I don't have their financials in front of me. I'm going to guess, though, yes. The mismanagement of BioWare is partially because of the greed of EA. Maybe not in totality, but definitely partially. Anthem exists because of the greed of EA. And Dragon Age the Veilguard is the result of a bunch of dominoes hitting one another that started well before it back in 2017, 2016, right? And that's partially because of the greed of Electronic Arts. So now with Battlefield, it's like, okay, you have a franchise, you have an IP that I think has more potential than Call of Duty. I think speaks to a different audience than Call of Duty, right? I think it's a mistake to view Battlefield and COD as like interchangeable things because they never were, right? Call of Duty is, shipping 24/7 shipping containers, and it's flashbangs and constant death, right? And hit markers and stuff like that. Battlefield is a squad-based team game, right? When it's at its best. Conquest is the only mode you need. And you have a medic, and you have a squad leader, and you have, anti-tank guy, right? So you have sort of the same Twitch shooting mechanics, sure, but there's also more tactical depth there, right? And that's what made Battlefield different. That, and of course, larger maps with vehicles and stuff like that. I feel like there is still a market for that. People would love something like that. So you could just, I don't know. I don't want to make it sound easy because it's not, but like, I feel like you could just make that and be fine, right? But instead, what I see here is EA wants the next Battlefield to be something at the scale of Call of Duty and the sort of effect of Fortnite, right? To have the same sort of user generation as Fortnite, which I think is stupid because you're taking something that, one, never got to those levels, two, does not need to get to those levels to be a successful game, and you're trying to drag it up a mountain just to see if it'll fly. And that's really frustrating, especially considering the human cost. And who knows what'll happen if this ships and it doesn't do well or it doesn't hit EA's expectations, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what I don't know. I don't know how a game could cost $400 million. But when I think to myself, does a game like Battlefield need to cost $400 million to be good? I can't, it seems so insane to think that the answer is yes. That it almost has to cost $500 million to make a good Battlefield. I just feel like that can't be true. Because the formula is there. Medic, squad leader, AT guy, engineer, grenadier. You don't need snipers. Fuck them. So there's your classes. Maps, conquest mode, tanks, airplanes, whatever. APCs, weapon upgrades. There's your structure. You don't have to spend a whole lot of ideation time trying to figure out how the game should be structured, right? So it's like, where are you spending? How is this costing so much money? Partially, it's because probably all the people they have working on it and how long it's taking. So there's probably all that.
That is the bulk of the.
Yeah, that's going to be the bulk of the budget. And again, so it's like, do you need all that to make a good Battlefield game? I don't know. I'm going to say no. I'm going to say probably not. And that frustrates me. And I think the other thing that frustrates me is I don't know, everybody has sort of fantasized about how you would do a Battlefield single player, right? You don't need linear, gritty stories about, I don't know, whatever Battlefield 3 was oh man, we gotta, there's a war that involves Russia, and there's terrorists, and there's US soldiers in the Middle East, and it's real and it's gritty, and it's you don't need any of that. You can just do it
was Bad Company.
Just do Bad Company, do something fun, do something light, right? Give us characters, give us I've always fantasized about imagine if you did a Battlefield game with light resource management, right? Where you had an Earth map and it's essentially galactic conquest, and you had armies with different level. And again, I'm just doing fan fiction here, but it's you can do that with Battlefield because the structure is there. Where Call of Duty, you'd have to do a bunch of stuff to get that to work, right? Because Call of Duty is not that wider array of things. So it's there's things you could do, I feel to make this work. Yeah. So, but the story is frustrating because it definitely sounds like the same poor management that EA did with BioWare. And that's too bad. And I don't know how it's going to turn out. But hopefully the game comes out and it's good. But I really hope that EA doesn't actually expect 100 million players. That seems
that's unachievable for them.
That's so incredibly unrealistic.
Yeah.
And
I mean, yes, over its lifetime. That's the it's post-launch, not
Yeah, and the story said specifically over a period of time that includes post-launch. So if this game reaches 100 million players over its entire lifetime, maybe?
Yeah.
But even then in the story, they said that Battlefield 1 reached 30-something. And Battlefield 1 was really successful and popular. And again, Battlefield 1 was a very standard package. You had an interesting idea with World War I places, and I thought it was okay. And then you had Conquest and Push. Perfect, right? I don't know. You didn't need a $400 million budget and live service bullshit and I don't know, trying to take on Call of Duty and Fortnite. You didn't need any of that. So,
and for that, for the live service component, that bulk of the 400 million that is payroll.
Yeah,
there's people that are there that are just doing
live ops.
Yeah. And it again, going into back to what you said, is that necessary for this game? Does every EA title need a live service component? Does every EA title need a microtransaction component to the game?
Yeah, and I think, I don't know, even if the answer is yes, the next question is to what scale, right? To what kind of, like how, because Helldivers 2 is technically live service, but it's not like, you know, you got a little thing with weapons and skins that you can get into.
Yeah.
But there's not, at least last time I played, there wasn't some massive storefront with like obnoxious battle passes and stuff like that, right? Which that's what, but again, it's like EA makes money from FIFA, and it seems like EA's priority is to figure out how to take everything else that it owns and make it that.
Yeah.
And so the result of that has been mismanaged BioWare and mismanaged DICE. And now Battlefield, which is, again, like this legendary series that for 10 years put out some of the best multiplayer shooters that have ever existed, has now, like Dragon Age or like BioWare, produced fewer games that have not been received as well. And now they're stuck in this mire, you know? And it's like, man, that's the other thing, you know? I don't know. I don't like calling for people's jobs and stuff, but what executive at EA made these decisions? And why are they still working? I don't know. Like who, that's something I want to know. Who sat down and said, who was the person that made the decision? Our next Battlefield needs to have an expectation of 100 million players. Because should they have a job in the games industry? I don't know, man.
I think it's fair to say that the seeds were initially sown by John Riccitiello, who is no longer there.
Yeah, but the thing is, so, and we've talked about this in the past, but like John Riccitiello wasn't super successful with, like if you look at EA's stock price, like Riccitiello got in there, and also Riccitiello got in there in like 2006, I think, or 5 or something. And in any case, it was right before the financial crisis. Yeah. So, and live service things were just finding their way, right? The iPhone store opened just in 2007, which I think between that and World of Warcraft, those were the two things that sort of built the foundation for live service games. Yeah. And live service games, I don't think really took off until like 2013 or 14, right? A little after Destiny. But John Riccitiello was out in like 2013 or whatever. And Andrew Wilson was in. And if you look at EA stock price since then, the stock price has skyrocketed. And I think that's mostly due to sports games. And of course, right as he took over, EA had other successful games like Battlefield and stuff like that. You're looking up SimCity. I don't remember when SimCity launched 2012. Yeah, and I honestly don't remember what.
Yeah, because that was one of the things like.
That was like one of the early like live service.
Yeah.
Online only. Of course, back then we didn't call it live service.
Yeah.
It was like online only, which was something else. It was the same thing with Diablo 3, right? It was like Error 37. It was like this other thing. And we knew is like, why do I have to be connected to the internet all the time? And so at that point, and companies were trying to figure out, okay, how do we create retention and monetization? They were trying to like figure that out at that point. And now they have, and so you did have that weird transition period. Yeah, I guess Riccitiello's second reign as CEO of EA is sort of the weird transition period where live service gaming...
That's why I say the initial seeds were some, because it isn't all on him.
Well, I mean, why not?
It might as well be, but it's not all on him. We shouldn't tar and feather him. Wink. No,
yeah, sure.
Joking. Again, it's not all on him, but he laid some of the groundwork over his tenure of CEO the second time, laid some of the groundwork for what would become the modern live service formula that we.
Yeah. And I think, and I don't know how, like under his tenure, I don't know what decisions he made. Just like with Andrew Wilson.
Yeah.
And, sometimes I think a lot of these guys, I don't know, like, if you put me in charge of a mobile company, would it really be that hard for me to be like, give the game loot boxes? Like, okay, am I a genius or am I just doing what people have been doing for 15 years?
Well, regardless of, like, how much stake they had in the individual decisions. They're still in that macro decision making process.
Yeah, so I don't know. In any case, yeah, this story was just, it was more mismanagement from EA. It seemed like more unnecessary stuff for a series that doesn't need any of that, and for a series that I think is totally viable today. It's not like people don't want to play Battlefield. I feel like it's totally viable today, but it just, the company that owns the rights is just trying to do something with it, is trying to fit it into a space that I think it doesn't need to be. And that's really unfortunate. And yeah, and I think it's mostly driven by greed. I don't know if that's an oversimplification or not, but I think just like with BioWare, I think that's just something else that's driven by greed. And then those decisions have ripple effects where now you start having studios close and miscommunications, and you have exhaustion and burnout and stuff like that, because you have these long development cycles where you're trying to build something into something it shouldn't have to be. So it creates all these other network effects, I guess, that anyway. Okay. Do you have anything else you'd like to say about this?
I just want to reiterate again, 100 million players is crazy.
Yes, it is. Richard is not here, so we do not have tidbits. So we will not play the tidbit sounder. We'll wait for him to get back. Follow us, youtube.com/gaming discourse, patreon.com/the gaming discourse. We'll see you next time. Bye.